Hello guys, it's Chris back here again with another episode of Civ 5. We are many turns into this game, and we are closing in on the finish line. We might finish up this weekend, we might finish up next weekend, but either way, it will not be very long anymore. Now to say, we have a very nice empire. Probably not at the strongest it could be at this point, but it's still a very nice empire. And hopefully, we can keep it together here. Except we might not be able to. You never know. Gotta be careful. Last 50 to 100 turns. I don't think we'll go another 100 turns, but we'll go probably at least another 50. Which isn't ideal. You can technically have the game finished by this point, but we faced some trials and tribulations. We didn't go the turtle route, so we didn't have our good science production as long as we could have. Instead, we were stuck with our science production being so-so. Not bad, not good. Not much happening here. Moving around our ships. Trying to figure out where we're going to do next. Getting rocketry soon. That'll allow us to get rocket artillery and start the Apollo program. We should be able to win a space race. Should is the optimal word, but I can imagine that we probably will. If not, we beeline XCOMs and try to take Arabia's capital that way. That would be an easy way to get it done too. But you never know. We are third on soldiers, which is not a good place to be, but because there are only 4 players in the game, we know the actual ranking, so it's Arabia, England, me, Japan. Which, not the best arrangement. If England decides to come in on us, it might be a little dicey, but I bet we could win a war against England and Arabia at the same time. I do think we are in a good enough position that we could do that. Might go south, but I doubt it. We're going to get the buy spaceship parts with gold. Of the 3 options, it's the one that has the most likely chance of being relevant in our game. Even though we're not exactly flush with cash at the moment, Space Race is probably where we're going to try to win the game at. Which means we need to develop Capital City a bit more, we need to develop our other cities, so that way we can get our spaceship parts out in a reasonable fashion. And we're also going to need to start to get work on the Apollo program done. Although I can't say for certain whether or not we're going to do that this video or we're going to do it next time. I was saying, got my new computer ordered. That's going to be exciting. It's supposed to come tomorrow or the next day. Then it'll just be a matter of actually getting it set up and getting all the pieces worked on. Making sure everything's right before we send out for whatever parts or fittings that we might need to finish off the ensemble. So I'm going to get a headset with an actual mic in it, so that way I can record simultaneously, which should cut down my editing time roughly by 2/3. Because when you're editing a video like this one, where you have the game footage and then you put audio over the game footage, you end up recording the footage, which takes the amount of time that it takes to actually watch the video. Then you end up importing the audio into your editing software. from there you have to watch the video again to make sure that the audio syncs up in places where you want it to sync up. So you have, doing it through the method that I'm currently using, video editing takes up about half. It takes about 2/3 of the actual content creation process, which isn't awful. It's not extremely time consuming. Like, for games like this Civ 5 game, it's really easy to sync up audio because generally you're not talking that much about specifics, and there are things where you don't need to be as precise as you would for something like Off or Magic the Gathering, where you're talking about something either directly that's happening or you're syncing it up to the exact moment it happens. So with Off, you need to go through the video generally at least another time to make sure that you have all of the audio cues synced up to where the people are talking, because you read what the people are saying to you. So at the same time, you have a situation where the audio has to be pretty close to perfectly in sync, which I'm honestly not that great at. I've watched some of my videos on YouTube and I know I've messed up in places, but with Civ it's not as big of an issue. Because as long as you fill out your general plan of what you want to do and can keep the conversation rolling for the length of the video, it's not as bad as something like Off, where you have parts where you're talking about other things and you're trying to keep it entertaining, but at the same time you also have sections of the game where you have to pay attention to the game and talk about what's being said in that specific moment. And it depends on how you end up viewing those things as to whether or not how closely you can sync things. Like, I used to do audio sync directly in the recording software, but I learned that if you record audio while watching your video in the recording software, you actually end up slightly off sync because the speed of play in the editing software isn't actually ×1 speed. So you end up with your audio syncing way off, which is why a lot of the early editing I did, specifically around Magic the Gathering, ended up being a little rough because the recordings never really matched up. Even when you sat down and watched the whole video in the recording software, you'd end up with a audio file that was way longer than your actual video file, which meant you had to go through and cut everything down and remove extraneous bits to make sure that you could actually fit everything within the time frame, which was honestly a little fun. I didn't not enjoy it. It was really good for the learning exercise of actually figuring out how to cut and splice audio. It helped me get ready for because the Learning Japanese series came out around the same time, so it helped me figure out how to move around and mess with audio tracks in addition to videos. So it's decent learning if you want to give it a try. But on to our Civ game. We are building our Apollo program. I'm glad I actually remembered to do that this episode. Getting some more research labs up, because you can never have enough research. Spying on Mecha. Slightly defended, but that 92 defense means that XCOM may not be enough to get the job done. They probably will. Like, if you slam enough XCOMs into a problem, it generally solves itself, but you can't really be sure about these things until you try them. And we are not close to being able to try that this episode. So it may be a future event, may not be a future event. You'll probably be able to figure it out tomorrow based on the video length. Like, if it's sub 30 minutes, we probably finish things up. But if it's more than 30 minutes, or 30 minutes in general, it might mean we have another weekend of this. Which I honestly wouldn't complain about. But these Civ sessions during the weekend, always a welcome addition. A minor subtraction from the tedium of the normal day. But either way, it's... my happiness bottomed out there for some reason. I don't really know why at that point. Must have been something to do with ideology. And like I said, either last episode or the episode before, I'm not really that well acquainted with ideology. And how tourism affects the actual production. Or how tourism affects the discontent negative modifier to your happiness. I know it does affect it, but it's like... I've had games where I've had way more tourism than the AI, and the AI was still influencing me. So I think it must be a derivative based off not only tourism, but also culture output. Because even when you have more tourism than the AI, they generally have more culture than you, because they focus more on that kind of thing. So I'm guessing that's how it works, and that's why I'm always being... affected to some degree by discontent, but like I said, I don't know off the top of my head. We are chasing down these enemy mobile SAMs. Where did the rebels even get mobile SAMs, to be honest? I mean, like, what the hell? My army doesn't even have mobile SAMs. Why should they have them? I mean, I know we know how to make mobile SAMs, but does that mean like one of the scientists researching my weapons technology decided, hey, I'm going to be a rebel today, and showed up outside the Capitol with his new invention? If so, I think we have some security problems in our empire. And the never-ending torrent of Arabian ships going into the meat grinder has arrived once again to show us how bravely they can die on the shores of London. It's got to be a depressing place to live, honestly. Every couple years, an Arabian fleet rocks up, gets shredded by artillery, and gets slaughtered on the beaches. That's got to be bad for the psyche, man. I should build like a zoo there or something. I know it's not like the best we can do, but gotta give them something, because the people of London, they've had a hard time. They were under the brutal dictatorship of an eternal queen, and now they're under our brutal dictatorship. They're probably not in the best of shape. So, we should give them a little slack, Maybe that'll be the spot where we open up like our version of Disneyland. I bet they'd love that. I think people love Disneyland, right? And we are continuing to upgrade our forces and to fight for the freedom of these people. And what they say, you can't be free without being conquered first. Just an American motto, honestly. Bringing freedom to disparate people. The holy mission. Holy mission of the Incan Empire. At least we haven't taken it too far. Like, we've been brutally militaristic in our approach to our beliefs and doctrine, but we haven't really just, like, straight up murdered anybody. I mean, the hardest we've hit is Japan, and they're still alive, they're still doing well. Boy, rocket artillery does just do a lot to embarked units. You know, I gotta wonder if we're the bad guys in this universe. Because, on the one hand, we are like the freedom democracy types. On the other hand, 100% of the wars declared in this world have either been declared by us or on us. So we've been involved in 100% of the wars that have happened in this game. Which is probably a little excessive, to be honest. Might want to slow our roll a bit. It's not as though we have a choice in the matter. Until we destroy enough of Arabia's troops, he won't declare peace with us. Because the AI is pretty stupid. They think, wow, I have a lot of units. I can win this war. And we're like, no, you can't. You're embarking your units across the ocean, and you were never very good at that to begin with. So you should probably just stop. And Arabia's like, nope, I have more troops than you. I'm not listening. And it's just a bit of a kerfuffle, but it'll work itself out in the end. We will help the people of Arabia see the error of their ways by slowly sinking all the forces that they send over our direction. They're just going to sit there bombarding my infantry unit with their frigate. It's not as though that's going to do any real damage. Looks like they got some heal off of that too. That might just be a UI bug, but if they did attack us and heal, I'm going to call it cheating. It looks like it doesn't matter how much they cheat, they're not going to be able to survive a third hit. Huh. Our military is still comparable enough that he might decide to wipe pieces if we ask nicely. But I'm still a little irked at him for betraying us. Like, Arabia was our one friend in this world. And he just kind of stabbed us in the back after we took London. Which means he was probably still going to try to stab us in the back even if we hadn't taken London. Although it might have been a better setup for us to have England and Arabia fight each other. But they're not going to do that now. Game is shaping up. We're probably going to end up working our way. There might be another happiness tenant we could take, but gold it is, I guess. I mean, we are a freedom-based capitalist, so it's not as though we're not going to try to solve our problem with gold. The Incan dollar will be king, I can assure you of that. $150 culture per turn. That's not bad. I've seen worse culture production at this stage in the game. For those of you who don't know, this game actually has a couple different game speeds to it. You know, game speed means it changes the quickness in which the game progresses through the technological ages. So if you wanted to, you could play at a much slower speed, and you'd end up having a much longer game, which honestly isn't always an awful choice, but like, the difference between the speeds is pretty big. Like, I'm pretty sure we're on quick. And this game has been 265 turns. It's going to be close to 300 by the end of it. So, it's not exactly quick. And if you go up to standard, it takes even longer. And then you have epic and like legendary speed. I don't think it's legendary, but I know the next one up is epic. That's even longer. So you can have a really long game of Civ if you want to. Most people I know of / have played with tend to play quick speed. Because while we do love Civ as a game, like 12 to 24 hours for a game is a little too long. Just a little too long. Building broadcast towers. Enemy Steamclad is near. Steamclad. Steamship? Ironclad, that's what they're called. English is my first language, by the way. I spoke it all my life, and I know its intricacies quite well. But sometimes the words are hard. Sometimes they don't make sense, and sometimes I just forget them. These things happen. And that can't be changed. Ooh, but we are part of a new world. The United Nations has been founded. That's good. It's good and it's bad. Because on a much smaller map, it means the required votes to win World Leader is much less. So it takes 28 to win World Leader. Arabia's already at 20. Which is really bad for us. We will need to finish up this game as quickly as possible. Or we might just have it stolen out from underneath of us. I know some people don't like diplomatic victories, and honestly, I'm not their biggest fan either. But at the same time, I think it rewards a certain style of play that kind of needs rewarded. Like going and being friends with all the city-states and making a lot of money, that kind of stuff needs to also be relevant for the game. I mean, you get a lot of stuff from being friends with city-states, but the reason people do it is because it helps get you votes in the World Congress, and that's the real benefit. Like, religion is also a big part of the game, but because you can't actually win with religion, it'll generally take a backseat to most things because while it gives you a benefit in the long term for the course of the game, having the best religion in the world isn't going to progress your victory condition unless you expect it to do so, which is a little more difficult. Like, sometimes, I guess you could spec your religion to be where you would be generating a whole bunch of faith, so that you could buy a bunch of great people, so that you could translate those great people into science, or buildings, or star forts, or something like that, to make the late game easier on you. But at the same time, why would you go that route when you could do it in other ways? Like, you can produce great people just passively from your cities. You can get gold a myriad of other ways, such as trade, which is more efficient. I mean, Tithe is really, really powerful, which is why I generally always pick it, but it's not... It's one of the things that's not useful if you don't use it. Like, if you did what I did, where you just build a religion and then forget about it for 200 turns, it's not going to help you. It'll help you a little bit. You'll be making like 20 gold from your own city, but it's not the best. But to be fair, I've ignored a lot of things in this game. Like, I have 0 trade routes. That's pretty bad. Although, to be fair, I'm used to playing an order-based Civ, which generally runs more on internal-based trade routes. So I'm generally not running an empire that needs trade routes for gold. I don't know, in the long term of the game, it's nice to have gold, and on higher difficulties it's nice to get science out of your trade routes. But at the same time, when you're playing as aggressively as I am, you can't really reliably expect trade routes to stick around, you know? Like, I've declared war on... Well, I haven't declared war on every player in the game, but I've fought every character in the game in war. And that means none of them really like me, and that they might decide to go to war with me, and at that point, any trade route production I'll have will be wasted. Because they'll declare war, my trade route will disappear or run right into an enemy unit, and it'll be done. We have about 4 minutes left in the video. Updates on state of the channel, things that are going forward. We'll be continuing off. Japanese practice will be continuing. Civ will either end this weekend or next weekend. After that, we might end up playing some Dark Souls or some Skyrim. Haven't decided yet, haven't tested them for recording, so I don't know if it'll actually be possible, but those are the two that are on my radar at the moment. Of the Dark Souls games, I'd probably be playing Dark Souls 2. It's my favorite entry in the series. I know it gets a lot of slack for not being as good as the original, but I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't like the first game that much. Like, I played it and I beat it, but it just wasn't as much fun, to be honest, for me. Like, in Dark Souls 1, what you do is you find yourself a broken weapon, and then you stomp the game. And you can play it in kind of like the Dark Souls 2 vein, where you're playing with pretty well balanced weapons. But at the same time, why would you when the Gravelord sword is just a death run away? So, I mean, that's my major problem with Dark Souls 1, is that for being an unfair game, you can get yourself some pretty unfair benefits for yourself that make the game not as challenging. Like, I've fought through Dark Souls 1 on multiple occasions, and I've had playthroughs where the bosses were, especially around the first few playthroughs, where the bosses were still challenging and difficult, and they weren't jokes. Like, the bosses are really hard if you play the game the way the game presents itself to you. Like, you go in with your hand axe and you hack at the boss. But if you know where things are, like if you get a Black Knight's Halberd or a Gravelord's Greatsword, you can clean up most of the bosses without much effort. Like, the Grave of Chaos is still going to be a ball ache, but you can mostly just breathe your way through. And Dark Souls 2 has elements of that still. Like, you can get some broken weapons when there are a couple of bosses that you can cheese really easily. But at the same time, most of the bosses will still be challenging, whether it's your first run or your fifth. So that's kind of what I like about it. I remember my first, one of the first bosses that really gave me a run for my money in Dark Souls 1 was the Capra Demon, which I'm sure isn't that uncommon. But, like, if you get a strong enough weapon, you can just KO the dogs in one shot and then stunlock the Capra Demon. So that's my little rant about Dark Souls. We are actually out of time. I didn't talk much about the game of actual Civ this time, but I hope you'll forgive me. Well, anyways, I will be signing off here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Bye for now.